May and it's coronation month, so we are talking about capes. You know how much I love the drama, and you know how much Charlotta likes a vintage twist. So we've got a bunch of lovely examples to talk about. So, as a reminder, Drafting Diaries is 3 sessions in the month. The first one is here, of course, on YouTube Live. The second one is over on my website. It's a paid session, and we give you a drafting tutorial talking about one of the designs that we talk about today. On a side note, we will be hosting an Instagram poll to see which design you want to learn to draft. You can find that on our Instagram pages, and you can have a direct say in what drafting tutorial we do for you. Anyway, the third session is a construction session where we talk about all things construction for our capes. So that'll be things like, you're shaking your head.
It's the other way around. It's drafting.
The third session is construction. No?
Oh, sorry. I said you first.
Oh, wait, what did I say?
First, it's fine. We can replay one of us. I think I missed it.
Anyway, third session, construction session. Ignore whatever I said. Third session, construction session, we talk about all things construction related. That's sewing, internal construction, things like fusing, all that kind of stuff. But today we have 4 designs that we wanted to talk about with you. They're all really fun, creative capes, and they all show you something slightly different and a different way that you can interpret a cape. So Charlotta, do you want to show us the designs?
Yes, and before I do, I was going to say, one point, we're looking very glamorous, both of us, just ready for the coronation.
Yeah, having my tiara.
Yes, yeah, I know. Very glamorous cape. So we'd love a thumbs up if you're watching, because it really helps with YouTube as well. And if you like capes, let us know in the chat if you're making any capes. So we are looking at 4. The first one, of course, as I'm involved, had to be some Balenciaga. We got this beautiful, it's quite a royal blue velvet cape. And we're going to talk about it in a second, because it's a typical Balenciaga cape. And then the next one we have is a contemporary one, but which is very Balenciaga influence, which I loved about it. So it's got Balenciaga hints, but it's made completely contemporary. And the next one is going to be a really nice, again, contemporary interpretation of a classic style. I don't know why I've got the volume button on there. And then, yes, it's very professional today. And the last one is a really fantastic contemporary Roxander, but I think it's got a hint of Holston and Vionette again. So again, they're designs which appeal both to contemporary and vintage fashion. And the first one I'm going to introduce, because from a pattern cutting perspective, it's really interesting, is this Balenciaga one. And both Kate and I, when we first saw it, we were trying to work out how it works. And we think it is something which Balenciaga did quite a lot, which is a front cape. So rather than your typical cape, which is either on the back like a superhero, or which goes all the way around, starting with a circle, if you look at the Georgian greatcoat. This one is actually the front. So it's a cape which probably attaches to a full swing coat. So there's some quite interesting things to consider when drafting it, such as how do you attach it, how do you get this amazing rise at the front. So Kate and I were already talking about interfusing and how to draft like a sort of understructure. So if you vote for that, we'll be talking about all these sort of things and what Balenciaga might have done as well. What do you think?
I think what's really interesting about this design is how the volume is gathered at the shoulder and how far out it's sitting as well. And we were trying to puzzle out earlier before we went live to try and bounce ideas on how we think that was created and how that was achieved. And just with the sheer weight of a velvet like that, like it looks like quite a stiff velvet, you can imagine that would sort of drag the whole cape, the whole garment forward as well. So it's a lot to think about in this one. I think it's really clever, as always Balenciaga is.
Yeah, there's always something clever going on underneath. And I always like how he just disregards what's conventional. Like you have a cape in the back or the volume at the back. He just puts it at the front and makes it take center stage.
Why would you have a cape at the back? Let's just put it on the front, make it center stage.
An apron, maybe we said, maybe. Well, then.
Yeah. Okay, so our second design is this one here. It's gorgeous. It's got this lovely yoke, and even the yoke itself has a lot to it. You can see it's beautifully sculpted to the body. It's got a grown-on collar, and it's got beautiful raglan lines. So when you're drafting that, you need to think about how you're actually going to put your shaping in, because that neckline will need a whole lot of shaping through those raglan seams and the shoulder seams. And personally, I love a yoke like this without an actual like traditional armhole seam, where it just feels like it's just been molded to the body. It's lovely. And then we have this incredible drama, you know how much I love it, gathered into the bottom edge of the yoke. And I imagine that that goes all the way around to the back. I actually haven't seen back photograph of this, but
It
if I
must
was
be.
yeah, it's so beautiful. If I was doing this, I would want that to go all the way around the back, almost like a traditional cape shape. And it's incredible because it's got so much drama. It's so beautiful, but it's just simply gathered in. And it would just be like, not quite rectangles. I would do it slightly more flared than a rectangle to get extra volume through the hem, but you're just looking at big flared pieces gathered into the bottom edge of that. And the fact that it's sheer as well, like the whole photo for me is just beautiful.
And I think the great thing is, of course, if we choose this for our two lessons, and we get Kate's insight into how it would be all interlined in the production line and all that sort of stuff, because you can just see how it's sort of it's molded, but there must be lots of layers, because I imagine that would be a silk, wouldn't it? The actual cape bit. Um,
Yeah, I reckon the top is maybe like a crepe
yeah.
or like a double wool crepe. And then the bottom, I'm guessing, is more like a chiffony type silk, that kind of thing. But you can imagine all that fabric gathered up into that bottom edge is really quite heavy. So you would have to really think about your inner construction of that yoke to actually hold its shape, because I don't think it's part of the dress. I think it's a separate garment.
Yeah, I'm not. I would imagine that. Yeah, separate and putting a zip at the back or something. That's always sort of things you then actually get into the proper drafting, isn't it? Once you find an image like that, you love it, and then you actually start working out how it's made. And what I like about it, on the membership a few years ago, we did like a 1950s sleeve like that, which was sort of again like fitted like a dropped sleeve and then all the gathers. But what's of course special about it is that you use these sort of vintage constructions of a drop shoulder, but then you make it completely different by not having an armhole. So it's
Yeah.
fun to play around with.
And this idea of that yoke seam is quite a vintage design. I always see it in sort of 1940s, 50s stuff, like
Yeah.
evening wear. I think it's a nice way to take inspiration from vintage style, but
Yeah.
in a really contemporary way.
And of course, if you didn't want it as over top as this one, it would actually make a really nice sort of autumn cape as well. If you just had that really constructed top part and then just have like a wool like hip length or something, or waist length, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
There.
This is like such a dramatic example, but
Yeah.
you could make it much more um, everyday friendly. Or you
Yes.
could just wear a floor length cape in everyday life. I am here for that.
Because I think that's one of the things, if you think of it like a normal cape, we've got like just, this is not part of our show, but this is like a Madame Grès cape. But you can see a lot of capes have like lots of volume, or they are sort of quite flat. If they have shaped shoulders, they're quite flat. What I like about this one is that they actually have still done all the shaping in the actual yoke, so it's not just a flat thing you put on, and which then probably won't fit you either, especially if you would buy it. So this actually has done all the fitting, as Kate said, all the shaping, but on a cape. So that's what we loved about it. That it's proper pattern cutting, but without all the normal components such as a body or sleeves. So the next one we wanted to look up, and I think you picked that, Kate, isn't it? Is it bridal there?
Yes.
Yes, but I
I think it's a red carpet look.
oh yes, you're right. Yeah, it's just the light always throws you off, isn't it? But the people in the background sort of have a giveaway. And I love this because I think that's really wearable. But this is again, it's an interpretation of a sort of classic cape. This the shaping, but in this case, a lot of the shaping is actually produced from the gathers at the front, so they help actually shape this cape along the shoulder, because there is, I don't think there's a shoulder seam. Is there, Kate, or is there?
No, I think it's one
No,
piece.
that's what's so beautiful. So it sort of takes all the volume of what you have on a normal cape, where you just have a one piece garment. And then through draping and through pattern cutting, and you could flat pattern cut it really nicely, it creates that really nice sort of flowery tulip shape. And of course, this is a red carpet look, but this would be really nice even at office wear, I think, because it's short enough that you have all the movement, you can type and stuff.
Yeah, you can lift your arm, you can drink
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
champagne.
Or your coffee.
Or your coffee.
Yeah.
I like this one because it opens at the center front,
Yeah.
and I think that makes it feel a little bit more every day, I think, than some of the other capes that we were looking at. I think having a center front opening immediately makes me think of a shirt or a blouse. And like you said, this is short enough to actually use in everyday life. And you could do this in a bunch of different fabrics as well to kind of interpret it in different ways. And I also love the fact that it's got a giant collar on it. It really balances out the proportions with it.
Yeah. I think this also would like nice with even like even roll collar as well, wouldn't it? Or even a shirt collar if you wanted to make out of
Yeah.
cotton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a
But
nice idea. I
I
like
think
that.
I agree with you. I think this is a garment rather than an occasion piece. That makes it really special, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And it's what I really like about this one is something that people can use in their own wardrobes. Like you can see this walking down the street. I
Yeah,
can imagine it outside. Whereas the other ones, of course, you don't imagine a floor length cape out on the street. This one feels more everyday.
I agree. And I think all of these looks, we've chosen sort of quite summery looks, but of course you can interpret them for winter. And I think in the UK, one of the big cape styles is always going to be the sort of outdoor cape, which is just really practical. And what's also nice about this style, for example, it hasn't got shoulder seams, which means you could add that to a coat to make it more waterproof. If you got
Ooh,
enough
I
time,
like that
when
idea.
I wanted to talk about the whole thing because cape's actually incredibly practical as well. So maybe we can cover at the end if you have some time.
Okay, so design number 4 is that beautiful Roxander drape. I couldn't talk about capes without throwing a drape in here. And I just love the fact that this is kind of like a deconstructed cape. I feel like it's someone who's like thrown on a cape over one shoulder and then walked out the door in a hurry. But it's so clever because it's part of the bodice. You can see it's all grown onto that piece going up from like the diagonal hip line, and then goes all the way up the shoulder and goes underneath where that bottom fold is, and probably goes into the armhole, and then it sweeps over the shoulder. And I just love that dramatic pleat that's there. And if you see this from the back, I don't think we have a photograph, but we can post it on our stories on Instagram. It again just like sweeps over the shoulder and then attaches into half the back neckline, so it again is just like a half cape on the back. But I thought it was a really modern twist on a cape. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of that green Amelia Wickstead dress that Meghan Markle wore for one of her
Oh
last.
yes.
Yeah, it's such an eye-catching dress. I think most people will know exactly the one I'm talking about. But it kind of reminds me of that sort of like sweeping scarf cape, like a bit of drama. And the fact that it's in white as well just makes me think of bridal, and I just love bridal wear.
I think it's also again it's quite vintage, with sort of 1950s, 40s. They did quite a lot of these sort of draped on details, which are actually quite practical. You know, they aren't like just loose; they're part of a garment. So it's sort of they create a bit of contrast to
Mm,
otherwise quite plain dress. And of course, what's really nice being Roxander. She's echoed the drape. The seam. Let's see, I can hold up my iPad with one hand. Um, you can see that seam there, which becomes like a 90-degree angle, actually echoes the drape, so they're parallel. So
mm.
it's sort of like even like with sort of normal seams, she uses really well. So it actually makes a statement.
Yeah, it's really considered.
Yeah.
And it looks like such an effortless piece,
Yeah.
but the construction in there will be meticulous. And all the little places where that drape is caught, it will be perfectly held in place that you can move around and walk with it, and it will still look like that, even though it just gives the impression of just thrown on.
Yeah, because it
I
looks
think,
like it's falling off, doesn't it? That's why it's
yeah,
so stunning.
yeah, exactly. I think that's my favorite thing about these types of drapes is that they look so effortless, but there is so much work that goes into creating that.
It does. And it reminds me a little bit as well when you have a sari and the end of it, you sort of drape over
Yeah.
your shoulder. And that sort of, it has that sort of look of, you get lots of different cultures, isn't it, of how you wear a scarf. And it sort of echoes all of these, whether it's vintage or other countries. But what's clever is that the scarf becomes part of the garment. And I think
Yeah.
it's the whole, what I love about it is that the whole top is one piece, isn't it? So it'd be a really
Yeah.
big, interesting pattern cutting piece. Um,
Yeah.
so if you don't know, Kate is going to do the drafting for our lessons this month. So if you choose this one, I'm really interested to find out exactly how the pattern piece will look like, because you can sort of start trying to work it out in your head. But it's probably going to be a really exciting pattern piece. And then the construction, as Kate said, that'd be really interesting how it all gets put together.
Yeah.
Yeah, even how they've added a bit of shaping in the dart. I can't actually work it out to get some pictures.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get some more close-up pictures, but I'm guessing all the bust shaping is right up into that drape. But of course, when you're draping, you can really mold stuff on the body. You can really play around. It gets really creative.
Also, the stuff which is actually quite hard to learn. So I know you got a draping course as well, but for beginners. But it's that sort of stuff where you, unless you see somebody do it, it's going to take you hours to get it right.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is quite an advanced drape, so it's not one I would recommend with beginners to just like have a go with, to actually be able to follow someone along and learn how to do that and think about all the things you have to consider when you're draping that. Even the preparation alone to start this drape would take a fair few hours. So yeah, it's a really interesting drape. I'm kind of hoping people pick this one because I kind of want to do it. Can you tell we have a definite favorite?
I think the other ones are sort of, you can do is flat pattern cutting. This is where you would want to do probably both drape and flat pattern cutting to start off, maybe, or to finish it off as well. So yes, I think that makes it the most interesting. And of course, there isn't much out there about draping going past the beginner, isn't it? I
No.
always found that the most interesting. The sort of, the Investwood, Roxander, all the sort of really clever draping. Yes.
Because it's so hard to teach because it's so creative, and a lot of the time you do a drape and you make it up as you go, so then to like teach that is quite difficult, I think. And it's not, draping's never a step-by-step process. It's much more free flowing. It's like if flat pattern cutting is like this, draping is like this.
And also it's sometimes quite hard to, it can be really simple, but then it's really hard to find out where it started. Because one of my teachers, he was one of the pattern cutters at Westwood, and he had a challenge where he showed us one of the Westwood skirts, and we had to try to copy it in 15 minutes. And
Nice.
it's like impossible. Like we all like tried to really complicated things didn't work. And then he showed us, and it was so simple. And I went to my membership one day because you just think, God, but again, you would have to go through the whole process to actually arrive at this beautiful, simple, amazing looking option.
Yeah.
So let's have. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, should we see if we've got any questions? If you have any questions, pop them in the comments, and then we can have a little look. In the meantime, shall we just have a quick recap of our 4 designs so people can just have a refresher? Now you've seen all 4 of them in detail, try to think about what you want to see next week or this week after, I think, for our drafting tutorial.
And if you've got any questions about them. So we had the lovely Balenciaga. Kate was a bit mean because she only let me put in one Balenciaga.
Hey, the second one is like vintage inspired, right?
Yeah. Because we've got a shared Pinterest board, and Kate starts it, and then I invade and I just put in like hundreds of Balenciaga stuff. This really beautiful, quite constructed yoke. So this will be really interesting because of all the constructions going in and all the underpinning. And then of course we've got the next one was the really wearable one, which I like because I think again there is something really clever going on with all the fitting is done through draping, but which can be done through flat pattern cutting, which is always quite good if you're maybe slightly more beginner. And then of course we got the Roxander, which is a bit more of a challenge but really interesting. So let's see if anybody has a question. I want to do a quick chat because I always find it quite fascinating because we chose sort of quite regal capes, and of course there is for purely ornamental cape you get in for coronation. But what I love about capes is, of course, is nowadays you got like Gore-Tex and nylon coats where you waterproof all the seams. But I think the original cape actually has a really clever, practical reason for it. That if you have no seams anywhere, it's completely waterproof, even wool fabric. So the Madame Grès sort of echoes stuff like that by being just circles. And you see it on these Georgian men's coats where you have like 10 circle capes. So, but I actually think it like looks stunning, but it's actually probably before waterproofing, it would have been the most practical garment you could have worn to go outside. So I always love how you get something really practical and then it becomes pure ceremony, pure fashion.
Yeah, in my mind, I'm thinking of like sailor capes from like back in the day, you know, when they used to oil, like
Oh
put
yes.
oil on them. And definitely like old sailor coats had like a cape aspect
Yeah.
to it, just sort of the top half. And I always think that's really interesting to
Yeah.
see how
Yeah, I
you
think
can use something in like a practical sense and then also a really beautiful sense, like the more.
because just imagine if you had like a walking coat. You know how walking coats are always really practical nowadays. But just imagine you made one out of waxed cotton and you added that to a really practical coat.
Ooh,
Wouldn't that be stunning? But it would
yeah,
be really functional because then you have no seams. You got like your neckline seam, but you could add like a roll collar or a fold down collar to again no seams, so it becomes completely waterproof. So that's really fun. They understand why capes exist, like capes at sailors or any sort of outdoor activities, like you always see in Pride and Prejudice, where riding coats have all these layers. And when you make it something really pretty, have fun with fashion. But if you understand where it comes from, you can actually be a bit more clever, I think, in your interpretation.
yeah, agreed. Yeah, understanding the history of a garment or a type of garment really helps you to interpret that. So we have a couple of comments. One, can we dive into all four of them? Honestly, I wish we could, but we only have time for one. So pick your favorite and let us know. Like we said, it'll be over on Instagram. But yeah, honestly, we've had a lot of fun discussing all of these designs, and I found it really hard to pinpoint to just pick a few designs for this chat because normally we pick three and we liked so many that we had to throw in an extra one as well.
Yeah, and I think it's also because there's such a variety, isn't it? Because quite often there's clear, like with the sleeves, they're all really interesting, but they're quite clear sort of examples of a type. While these ones, all four, are completely, and there are hundreds different. And I think because it is so draped, even with flat pattern cut, you have much more creativity, isn't it? And
Yeah.
the second thing was from Laura, and Laura is a dog walker, so she just needs to go outside. And she said that makes sense. Even the sealed seams don't always work. Yeah, so anything properly, it doesn't really. And you're a rower, Kate, aren't you? So you are out in all
Oh
weathers.
yeah. Maybe I should make a nice cape for rowing. I could feel very fashionable.
It'd be perfect, isn't it? Because you don't have to lift. Do you have to lift up your arms? I'm completely
You
clueless.
have to like move back and forth like this. I feel like it would probably get in the way, but
But you
I'll
know
think about
what?
it.
You would be like the perfect, isn't it, to revolutionize rowing gear, like the cape, because you could do it exactly when it's like fixed to arms, isn't it? So you have the
Yeah,
good
it could like
strength.
go straight over, although our hands do go quite far out. Okay, guys, we are going to copyright this or patent it. The cape for rowing, you've heard it here first. Okay, we have another one to say for the second style, are you able to move your arms? Or maybe a different question, how would you make something like that more practical?
Okay.
Um, yeah, that's actually a really great question because it does come quite far down, almost to that kind of
Yes.
bicep point. So you would find that your movement's probably fairly restricted in that. But I think having that little curve going up higher at the front helps with the movement a little bit more. And of course, if you wanted to make it a little bit easier to move, you could take that lowest point of where the shoulder seam is and raise that up so that it doesn't quite go down so much. It goes more straight across like this.
But because of all the practical things Kate can talk us through as well when we're drafting it, because it is all that sort of stuff, isn't it? How much movement, where is the movement, depending on the shape, and like little changes can make all the difference with these
Yeah,
styles.
yeah, they really can. So I think we have another comment as well. Claire says, I thought capes were the first shaped outerwear after cloaks. They are able to cover many garments due to the volume of fabric. The idea of having no seams and being waterproof is a great idea.
Yeah. No, it
Yeah.
sounds completely right. I feel like a bit of a fraud because some people are like historians and they research it all, isn't it? I watched Pride and Prejudice. I was like, oh, that makes sense from a pattern cutter's perspective. And then I put all these theories online and tell us off. But I think it's like it's always sort of, it's also related, isn't it? What's the easiest way you can cover, the most effective, isn't it? While of course with some things cape get too restricted, isn't it? Like because you have your arms, isn't it?
Of course, yeah.
But,
and also, I guess if we're looking at it in a historical point of view, before sewing machines were invented, you wanted to minimize the amount of seams you had in a garment as well. So if you can do a one-piece garment, then you're making life a lot easier for yourself, and also it uses there's less, I can't speak, fabric wastage, of course. And fabric was very, 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 very expensive back in the day.
Yeah, I guess, and I wonder if with circles where they did something clever, how we maybe interlock or something.
Possibly. But then I've seen a lot of capes that are like square as well, no?
Oh yeah, that's the traditional one, isn't it? Because I think I wonder where something like, especially in Scotland, where you have tartan weaving, where that kilt could be worn as a cape. Because now actually, if we talk pure romantic fiction, have you ever watched Outlander?
No.
Oh, okay.
I've seen the adverts for it, but I've never seen it.
So the first season is just the only one I watched, but it's like wonderful, trashy, romantic. Actually, historically, it's relatively well researched, I think. But they have a whole thing how the kilt, and I looked it up, and it's actually historically correct. Rather than nowadays, you have a kilt which is pre-pleated, which is shaped, and then it has a buckle. Historically, it would have just been a massive piece of tartan cloth, and when you would have pleated it on the floor, put a belt through it, and I think when you actually would lay it, sit on it, and when you fasten the belt, and when you either have a double layer kilt, or you actually have a kilt and a cape which goes over you in your horse riding to warm you up.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes. So again, it's like where you could watch it. Very nice looking Scottish male as well. But it's that where you actually think, oh, that's like, because they wear it as a cape there when they're horse riding.
Okay.
Again, wool at that time would have been waterproof because it would have been raw wool. But probably would have been dyed, but it's that I mentioned it being a really itchy,
like wiry,
yeah, it is waterproof. So, yeah, it's often again where you can mention the cape coming from it being square, as you said, rather than round. So the round was really a fashion thing already.
I love that. I'm going to go look that up.
So your evening,
the cape and the program.
And the other thing is like something we won't, lovely beginner friendly ways. We used to really lovely knitted cape out of double cashmere with a beautiful trim, but it was literally a long rectangle which you then used to fold, and then you stitched the top nearly to the end, so you just had a neck size or head size hole. If I can get a piece of paper, I can show you. So it's like this, and when you fold it, that'll be square, and then you just stitch it to here, but you have a neck-sized one, and then you wear it as a cape. And because that neckline is asymmetric, it becomes a really beautiful draped cape, and you can sort of turn it different directions and get the drape. And I think we used to make it just so, it's sort of that lovely 7/8 length in an Italian cashmere, and then with the slight double width trim around the edge, like a thick binding and a contrast color. It was so expensive, even cost, because one of the perks, Kate and I know, you might be really badly paid, but you get stuff at wholesale or cost price. But I think even at cost price, my yearly, allowance wouldn't actually cover it.
I mean, that sounds incredible. I want one of those. That sounds like an amazing piece.
If you're a knitter, you've come across a nice piece of knit, you could make it really quickly and easily, isn't it? It's like, but it looks, it's sort of like a nice sort of spring or autumn.
Yeah, and you could do it in a woven fabric as well.
Yeah.
Do like a beautiful binding on it as well.
Yes,
That'd be a lovely idea.
If it's a soft drapey one, it's sort of slightly. It's like a sort of more simplistic version of what vest would do, because they quite often do a t-shirt shape, but they move the neck hole to one side on me, and then it looks pretty draped. Again, it's actually pretty simplistic. And it's sort of a simple version of that, but just by slightly moving to one side. It looks really interesting.
Love it.
Great.
Alrighty, so as a reminder, you can vote for whichever design you want to see on our Instagram stories. We'll both put a poll up after we're done here. If you want to sign up for the drafting session, you can do that on my website. The link is in the description of this live, and you'll find it on our Instagram pages as well. And you can also sign up for the construction session. You can sign up for both and you'll get a discount. They're normally £10 each, but if you sign up for both, you will get it for £17. And like I said, they're all live. There's a Q&A, and yeah, they're a lot of fun. So hopefully we'll see you guys there.
Yes, hope so. You got both of us chatting about stuff and teaching.
I want to hear more about this dreamy Scottish man and this TV show.
We know what Kate is going to do until next Tuesday.
Binge watch the whole thing.
Voting on the Roxanda and watching out then.
All right, guys, that's it from us. Thank you so much.
Yes,
we will see you for the drafting session.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.